Hello and welcome. My name is Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com. And today's podcast conversation is with Mark Yearby from Mark One Management Consultancy. Mark's company provides both initial strategic consulting and follow-up multidisciplinary training and coaching services. And Mark is talking to me in this podcast on a topic that's actually a very important one to my mind, which is the role of change management within customer success management. You are listening to part one of a three-part conversation that lasted over an hour in total, and part one covers the first 20 minutes or so of that conversation. So please sit back and enjoy. Hi, my name is Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com, and today I am joined by Mark Yearby, the founder and owner of Mark One. Mark One is a UK-based management consultancy with a difference. That difference being that the company combines initial strategic consulting, but followed by multidisciplinary training and coaching services to meet the precise needs of the client. Their mission is to help startups and SMEs recover and adapt to changing business conditions, something that I think we can all agree is happening a lot at the moment, and to ensure their positive and sustained profitability. Mark, it's great to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to join me today.
That's great, Rick. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to join you. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. And our title for today's conversation is The Role of Change Management Within Customer Success Management. And as always, I am super excited to be talking about this topic. And to me, change management is something that is very important for all good customer success managers to embrace and understand. However, before we get into the details about change management, perhaps you'd first of all please just introduce yourselves to us, Mark, and give us perhaps a brief history of your career to date and also what you do now.
Sure, thank you very much, Rich. As Rick has introduced me, my name is Mark Yearby, founder and managing director of Mark One. I've spent a large proportion of my career working in leadership positions across companies of different sizes, some of them global even. And as such, a lot of my time has been spent working on change management initiatives, quality improvements and process improvements as well. Those two things obviously have encompassed a lot of change. And so that's given a bit of an insight into kind of my journey and my interest in change management, because I think we can all agree that a well-managed change process is highly effective. When done badly, well, we know the outcome of that, don't we? We've all been on the receiving end of poor change management and the impact that that's caused.
Thanks for that, Mark. And once again, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. So, okay, let's get going on the role of change management within customer success management. And perhaps let's just kick off by defining our terms. So when we talk about change management, Mark, what actually do we mean, and what would the field of change management generally focus on, and what would it include?
Well, there's lots of depending on who you talk to, there's different variations of the definition of change management. The one I quite like is it's a systematic approach that includes dealing with the transition or transformation of organizations, goals, core values, processes and technologies. So it's all encompassing. But the important thing with this is it's the human factor as well. Change management is not just about a process change. It's about managing people through that change, the human factor, because it's the people who define whether it's going to be success or failure for the business. So I like to focus on the human element of change.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mark. And actually, just to add to your thoughts, Mark, with another definition for change management, which comes from Prosky. I'm sure you know Prosky.com. They're the company that owns the ADKAR change management framework. And Prosky's definition of change management actually is quite similar to yours. It's the process, tools, and techniques to manage the people side of change to achieve a required business outcome. And I just want to compare that to my own definition for customer success management, which is the use of best practice processes to help customers attain customer success. And if you take that with my definition for customer success, quite simply as being the successful attainment of a customer's outcomes, and suddenly it becomes evident that customer success management and change management are actually very closely aligned indeed.
Oh, of course, absolutely.
and where perhaps people within the customer success management community might think that what they're doing when they're helping customers attain business outcomes is a fairly new and out there role. Actually, it's only what change management has been doing for a very good many years, albeit under this different name and with a slightly different remit. And of course, what is new is where the customer success manager comes from, who pays for them. Because, of course, the CSM comes from and is paid by the vendor or the reseller of the product or the service or the solution that the company whose initiative it is has purchased. Whereas, of course, the change manager is either directly employed or hired by that company, by the purchasing company. So I think if this has not already made at least some people who are watching us or listening to us who are customer success managers suddenly realize, change management, that's really important, I should understand it better, I'd be surprised. And I think we're likely to uncover much more as we go on. So let's actually do that. Okay, Mark, so let's talk about the world as it is today in the back end of 2020. And I know you've got some thoughts and observations on that. So obviously we've been massively shaken up this year by the dramatic and in many cases, very negative impact of COVID-19 on so many people. And now at this stage, after a good half a year or more of disruption, how do you think customers' needs and or expectations have changed due to COVID-19?
That is a very big question, and it's not an easy one to answer. I think at the root of it, what customers want to feel at the moment is as much of a sense of normality and business as usual as is humanly possible. Now, that's normal from a customer's point of view, but obviously that's going to present a significant challenge to any business they're dealing with who are not operating in a business as usual way. So you've got this almost like a bumping of heads almost. One person wants normality, the same as things they were. They want seamless transactions. They want seamless interactions with the organizations they're dealing with. And the challenge is for businesses to be able to continue to do that when they're now operating with a distributed workforce, maybe with a reduced workforce. Do they have the telecommunications infrastructure in place to be able to manage incoming calls in the way that they used to? All of this, the customer doesn't care about the behind the scenes stuff. They just want to do business in the way that they have done it before. They don't want to be burdened with additional administration just to be able to purchase a product or purchase a service or to get some information. I feel that they want that sense of normality to be a continuation of where it was. And my challenge to the organizations is, how are you going to provide that? How are your customer service teams and your customer service managers, your sales teams, etc., going to continue to provide that level of service when your own ability has been almost hobbled, for want of a better description, by the restrictions that have been put in place?
Hi everyone, it's Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com here. Just wanted to let you know that myself and my friend Peter Armley from Oracle will be doing a webinar on December the 16th at 8:15 in the morning if you're Pacific time, 11:15 if you're East Coast, 4:15 p.m. if you're UK, 5:15 if you are in Central Europe time. The webinar is entitled, "What Should the Customer Success Function Do?" And Peter and I will have a 30-minute conversation on that topic, followed by a 15-minute Q&A with yourselves, whoever is attending. You are very welcome to come along and join. To register, go to practicalcsm.com/strategy. practicalcsm.com/strategy. And we'll be covering things like the purpose of customer success management, the origins of it, where it came from, the core aspects of the customer success role, generically, but also then how to determine the specific requirements for your customer success team and put that into action. So what should the customer success function do, with myself and Peter Armley, December the 16th in the morning for US, in the afternoon for UK and Europe. practicalcsm.com/strategy to register. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so from a change management perspective, change managers are recognizing that right now, just working, as it were, not on like if you like, strategic visions or strategies for growth, but on trying to maintain normality.
Yeah.
That in itself, actually, normality has changed.
Normality
Therefore,
has changed, yeah.
yeah. There's that. I know people hate this expression. Forgive me. I know people hate it, but the new normal. So
Yeah.
if normal is new, well, then what's the implications for change management there? So it implies, does it not? We've got to adapt to the new normal, which means we need change management just to stand still, as opposed to, change management is that occasional thing we do when we do something different to how we normally do it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the role of change management has changed and shifted to, like you say, to allow the continuation of what was from the customer's point of view. We've all been involved in change projects where there's been like a step change needed in terms of business efficiency or whatever it might be. We're not in that mode anymore. And unless the business is very lucky, they're looking to certainly grow, but that's an idea into the future. To be able to continue to maintain the level of expectation that the customer has, the business fundamentally has to change in terms of how they interact with the customer. So as I said, how are we responding to telephone calls? Do we have the infrastructure in place? Do we have the training in place? Do people understand what their role is within this new structure, within this new organization, within this new normal? Or I did the fingers thing there. People need to be managed through that. It's not just a process change, it's a people change as well. And people's view on where they fit within that and how they fit is increasingly important, particularly when, we hear on the news almost on a daily basis now about, such and such a company cutting back, redundancies here, redundancies there. We have employees who are probably feeling fearful for the long-term prospects of their role. That also forms an integral part of change management. How are you managing people through that change? You're not just managing your customer, you're managing your employees and your teams as well as your processes through this. And as I said right at the very beginning, unless we help people hold their hand and manage them through that change, through the difficult part of that change, the change is not going to be effective. And your customers will notice. They will notice immediately a degradation of performance. They will tolerate that for a while because of the situation we're in. But everybody has a limit to their tolerance. Everybody does. What a business doesn't want is people saying, you're too difficult to deal with. I'm going to go somewhere else who's found a company that's made it easier. You've lost a customer. It's very difficult to get that customer back again because they will be soured by that negative experience.
Absolutely. And of course, particularly at the moment, the focus is on customer retention as being even more critical than ever before, simply because it is so very difficult to go out there and make new sales right now in the current financial climate, current environment. Okay, all right. So look, what we've really said then is, in the world we live in today, in 2020, with COVID-19 having impacted us the way it has in such a dramatic way, is that if we thought that change was occurring more rapidly beforehand, what we can say now without a doubt is that actually the one constant is change. Okay, yeah, so change management becomes much more important within an organization than perhaps it's ever done before, is rising to the fore. And in a similar way, as I've just said, customer retention has become really critical to many businesses, and because actually selling to new customers has become more difficult. And as such, similarly, we have seen the rise of importance at the C-level of customer success management as a function within business for the same reason. So we've got to handle change internally. We've got to help our customers handle change externally if we want to keep our customers. So we're seeing that, but if you like, they're from the same source. They're two different things. One is talking about internal change. One is talking about external change within our customer organizations, but actually both come from this same sort of reason behind them. So,
absolutely.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So let's talk about employees then. So you've mentioned then about employees. So what is the potential impact of all this change on employees, and how? Let me ask you sort of two questions in one. What's the impact, and how can change management best practices help to manage this change? We're looking at the internal change here.
Okay. Well, as I said a few moments ago, there's a lot of employees at the moment who are probably feeling fearful about the long-term prospects of the organisation with which they're in. Will they have a job in 6 months' time? That's going to be an immediate fear. They will see the business operating differently from how it was before, and they'll be wondering, where do they fit within this? I mean, let's be honest. People are creatures of habit. We like our little comfort zones. We like our little bubbles that we sit in. We like to have order and structure around us. That has all been thrown into chaos with COVID. None of us can obviously sit back and think, yeah, we feel comfortable. No, nobody does. So you've got this resistance almost, if you like, to change from certain employees anyway. They will, just like the customers, want everything to be normal, just as how it was, because that's a normal human reaction. And I do, on the stuff that I do talk a lot about the human side of it. But it's overcoming this fear, because with fear becomes resentment and resistance. And this is where the change management process absolutely must seek to address that, because you need your teams pulling in the right direction. They need to feel that they're working for the greater good, not just for the benefit of themselves, but for the greater good of the organisation. Because if the organisation succeeds, then they will still be retained in a job. Hopefully, they will still be retained in a job. Their role may be slightly different, but they can see where they fit within this, and it gives them a sense of purpose. And once they go through the fear cycle and the recovery on the other end of that curve, then they can start to see, actually, the change is important, it's necessary, I can see where I fit, and from a business point of view, I can see where I can contribute to the success of the business. And what you start to get then is people acting as almost advocates for the change. If managed properly, people can then become an advocate for the change, and then you see other people being brought along for the journey. So this is why I focus a lot of what I do on the human element, because any change, the success of any change, is absolutely determined on people being managed well through that, given the right structure, the right level of communication, honest answers to honest questions. That's how you manage people through change. It's honesty, it's trust, it's communication, and helping them understand where they fit and where they can contribute.
You mentioned something that yes, I absolutely agree. And I'm particularly, it was interesting, you mentioned the fear cycle. And I think that's quite an interesting concept. Would you mind just expanding on that just a little bit, just in general terms?
Absolutely. So what we call in change management is when everything's sitting in a nice and quite happy, steady state, as we call it, and then a change occurs. So we'll call this change COVID, for want of a better name, because it's the one that everybody knows. This is at the point where an external action has happened which has required a change. Now, it could be a change of process, whatever. People's immediate response is, oh no, what does this mean? And they fall into what we call the valley of despair. It's where they feel lost. Their mood drops, their performance drops, the whole sense of being drops. Now, it will vary from person to person. Some people, the more resilient amongst them, will come out of that very quickly. Other people in certain demographics won't. They will go right, and they'll hit rock bottom, and that's where their performance deteriorates massively. Their level of engagement with the business deteriorates hugely. The quality of their work drops. It's not necessarily their fault, because I look at that as, has the business managed them started to manage?
Well, it is their genuine physiological reason to what's taking place in their world. So effectively, they're in a state of anxiety caused by a fear of lack of control.
Absolutely. Now, in part of what I teach on one of the courses, we actually refer to this as almost a bereavement, because the way they were doing it before is no longer there. So they
have lost something. Yes.
Yeah, they've lost something, and it's a sense of bereavement. Now, coming back through that, when they're being well managed through that process, if they're not managed through the process, they effectively stay there and become increasingly disenfranchised, And ultimately, either they will leave the business of their own accord, or their performance has deteriorated to the point that they will be managed out of the business. Neither of which is a positive outcome for the individual or the organisation, particularly as I absolutely view it as not their fault in the first place. Alternatively, if they're well managed through that process, we can bring them out of that valley of despair a lot quicker by giving them the tools to enable them to self-manage through the change, to manage their own personal behaviours, by proper coaching and support and guidance from the management team or their co-workers, through clear structure, through new process and training to help them understand what this change actually means to them, to understand what the end goal is, where do they fit within this new objective. The sooner we engage with that, the quicker we can get them out of the valley of despair. If we don't do that, if we just react, the best the business can expect is the same level of performance as they had before. That's the best you can expect. The likelihood is you may not get there. However, if we adopt the proactive approach where we recognize right at the outset of the change that people will fall into that valley, we can get them out of it quickly by putting all these structures and all this sort of good stuff in place. Not only do we get them back to where we were before, but we can also get a high level of operational performance out of them because we've started to turn them into advocates for the change. So they start to generate a level of excitement about it. I'm not going to say it's easy, because it isn't. It takes hard work, and it takes proper planning, and it takes commitment by the leadership team and the managers within the business to get them through that. But they must recognize it's all about the people. The process, whatever the new process happens to be, is almost irrelevant. It's all about the people. Get them through that process, manage them through that process. They'll get there, and they will become your best advocate for that change. And they'll make them more resilient for the next time a change happens, because they will attach a positive sense to it.
Okay.
So I hope that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. Absolutely. Most definitely makes total sense. And I think we could perhaps say that by and large, change can be both a challenge and an opportunity.
Oh, completely. Yes. And what you make of it.
Right. And it is a challenge that if not met, can cause. Okay, so that is the end of part 1, and parts 2 and 3 will follow next week and the week after next. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and remember to hit the bell icon to be notified when new videos are released, or go to practicalcsm.com and fill out the membership form to be kept updated with all sorts of free customer success related content and discounted training offers.